See how confused I can get everybody. We're at the Descendants of Shem. Of course, that is one of Noah's sons. I heard the door close. And, verse 10 and 11 says, these are the records of the generation of Shem. He was 100 years old, became the father of Ar. That's close enough. 2 years after the flood. And Shem lived 500 years after became the father of Ar, and he had other sons and daughters. So we know that, we said this last week, it doesn't say that Noah had other sons and daughters, but just about everybody else is saying that. And so, did Noah just have the 3 sons? We don't know. Maybe he did. Maybe he had others. We only know what the scriptures tell us. Now, what I was trying to bring out last week, and I'm not going to read through all of this because basically from 10 through 26 is just a list of generations of this one had this one at this age, and they lived so long, and then this one had this one at this age, and they have so long. So the year of the flood, now this is from creation, was 1,656. Well, Shem turned 100 2 years after the flood. So add 102 years, and that would be 1658, which is when his son, Ar, however you pronounce that name, was born. Now, if we keep on going, Ar had Shelah, and that would have been the year 1693, then 1723, and I'm going to stop writing. Peleg was 17. You can kind of follow along. His son was Peleg. It would have been the year 1,757 years from creation. His son Reu would have been when he was 30, so that would have been 1787. Sherug was 1819. Nahor, 1849 years since the point of creation. And then Terah, which is Abram's father, would have been 1,878 years. 1,878 years from creation is when Tahor would have been born. When he was 70, so that would have been 1948, or years since creation, he had 3 sons, named sons, Abraham, Nahor, and Haran. Everywhere I've read, other than I noticed with Shem and Ham and Japheth, they were not in order, but usually the first one named is the oldest, then the next to the oldest, and then etc. and so forth, when there's a list of siblings. So Abram is believed to have been the oldest, and by somewhere around 1,940 years from creation, he was born, probably somewhere earlier than that. And what we see from all of this is, now in my Bible, yours too, in the front or somewhere may say such and such was born at this age, or their ministry started at this age. And so, let's see. Is that what? Yes. So Isaac would have been born somewhere around 2048, and I got myself confused again as normal. Abraham, I look on my little Bible chart, says he was born 2164. Now this is BC, because you know BC counts down to 1, we're in AD, and we're going up from 1. So Abraham was born 2,164 years before year 1. And so you add that in, that's when he was born. Well, so you add like the 1948, 12, 10, 11, so that's like 4,112 years of creation. This year is 2021, So that's 3, 3, 1. So that means the Earth's only about 6,130, give or take, years old. But the world says the Earth is how old? Billions. Not. So, and that was the main reason I was doing the calculations of the ages and so forth, because it does show, and you can do it and find a point in history, like they know when the Roman Empire began, and they know some other points that when the Macedonians or the Greeks, I think, Philip, and this reign and that reign, they know the actual years for those. And so you can kind of go from that. And what you find out is the Earth is only about a little over 6,000 years old. But the world says, oh, no, it's billions of years old. And I meant to cover this when we were doing the flood, and should have printed some stuff too. But why do you think society or the world, science says the world, Earth, is billions, but the Bible says it's only a little over 6,000? Any thoughts?
They want it to appear the Earth was here before God created.
Well, something along that line. But you ever heard of carbon dating? This is where, like, when the archaeologists and they find something, they have, if it's a machine or something, they test items with to tell how old it is. The problem is carbon dating really is only accurate to like within 1,000 or 2,000 years. So it's like this little machine registers and goes, bing, oh, it's 1 billion years old. They do it with bones that they find. Dinosaurs. This was 10 million years ago, or something along that line. They say, what was the other part? Finding fossils and how they harden up, and people, animals and so forth were caught in the ice age and this and that, and that's, it took billions of years. Well, who remembers Mount St. Helens, Washington State, when that volcano erupted? What they found after that, because you got the volcano and lava starts spewing out and it just runs down, and they found perfectly preserved images of plants, I think even a few animals. They got caught in that lava flow. And so that showed, well, when Noah's flood came along and you've got all this stuff flowing and so forth, they talk about the Grand Canyon. Oh, that took millions of years to form, Well, you just take a little trickle of water and you run it down a path. Yeah, it might. But imagine the flood of Noah, rain coming from above, and from below, what it could have done in just a matter of a few weeks. So Noah's flood helped to make the earth seem as though it's millions, if not billions of years old. But in reality, it's only a little over 6,000 years old. More than happy to debate with anybody. So, there we have all the way through chapter 11, verse 26. Terah lived 70 years, became the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran. He said, I'm not going to go through all those. You can feel free that when you have insomnia to read the list of generation after generation. Verse 27 says, now these are the records of the generations of Terah, who became the father of Abraham, Nahor, and Haran. Haran became the father of Lot. Haran died in the presence of his father Terah in the land of his birth in Ur of the Chaldeans. Now the Chaldeans is basically another name for the Babylonians. Where was Babylon? Modern-wise, you remember? Little country, not so little, we know as Iraq. And Ur, in the Bible, is somewhere around the border of where Iraq, and you might also remember this country, Kuwait. Remember that one? George W. Bush? What was it, a 7-day war? Oh, that they were all that short. Somewhere around Kuwait is where Ur was. So it's on the Persian Gulf or just above the Persian Gulf. So Abraham's family were essentially Iraqis. That's their ancestry. And we go on, verse 20. And Abraham and Nahor took wives for themselves. The name of Abraham's wife was Sarai. Nahor's wife was Milcah, the daughter of Haran, father Milcah and Ishkah. Sarah's barren, she had no child. Terah took Abram, his son, and Lot, and son of Haran, Lot, the son of Haran, his grandson, and Sarah's daughter, and Abraham, and all that, and went as far as Haran and settled there. And then, of course, Terah died at the age of 205. Now, Haran is another name that you might be familiar with in Scripture. I say Ur was like down here by the Persian Gulf, and they travel up to Haran. Israel is going to be on this side, right by the Mediterranean Sea. Can you think of anybody else who was in the city of Haran that's going to be in the book of Genesis? Abraham's son of promise is Isaac. He married Rebekah, who came from Haran. That's where, I think it was Abraham's brother's daughter. And then, of course, Isaac has Jacob, who goes back to Haran, where he meets and falls in love with Rachel and ends up marrying Rachel and her sister Leah because their brother Laban tricked them, but they were also descendants of Abraham, but they were living still in the country of Haran. Now, Haran is located somewhere on the Turkey-Syria border. Somewhere, in fact, I Googled it and it come right on up. I didn't see anything on a map anywhere with that name. And they didn't give it a name per se for today. But it's somewhere right there on that Syria, Turkey border. Kind of be, eastern Turkey and north part of Syria. Go home, find you a map, and they'll show you exactly where it's at if you're not familiar with it. Or you can look in the Bible. Some Bibles will give you a good understanding in the back of the maps. All right, then we get into chapter 12, which is an important chapter for us. It is the call of Abraham. Because remember, the Bible goes basically from Adam to Noah, Noah to Abraham, Abraham to David, David to Jesus. And so, verse 1, chapter 12. Now the Lord said to Abram, remember his name is Abram now, exalted father. His name will later be changed to Abraham, which is father of a multitude. And so verse 1, now the Lord said to Abram, go forth from your country, from your relatives, from your father's house, to the land which I will show you, and I will make you a great nation. And I will bless you and make your name great. And so you shall be a blessing, and I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you, I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Now, is this all families? Okay? God is saying all the families of the earth will be blessed in Abram. How are all the families blessed? He's not just saying your descendants, Abraham, or the people who live within 100 miles of you. He's saying all families of the world. How are all the families in the earth or on the earth blessed through Abraham? It's like I just said. Abraham is going to go to David. David goes to Jesus, and all the families are blessed because of Christ, Jesus. And that's what God meant. Abraham, through you is going to come the Redeemer. Abraham, through you is going to come the Messiah, the Christ. Abraham, through you, people will be forgiven of their sins and allowed to have a relationship with God again and enter into heaven. Abraham, all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Woo. Verse 4, Abram went forth as the Lord had spoken to him, and Lot went with him. Now Abram was 75 years old, and he departed from Haran, remember, that Turkey-Syria border, and he took his wife Sarah and nephews Lot. He took all their possessions, which they accumulated, the persons and all the flocks and everything else that they had. That they had acquired where they were there, and they set out for the land of Canaan. And they came to the land of Canaan. Verse 6, Abram passed through the land as far as the site of Shechem and the oak of Moreh. And now Canaanite was there in the land. So they were living there in the land. The Lord appeared to Abram and said, to your descendants I'll give this land. So he, Abram, built an altar there to the Lord who had appeared to him. Then so here Abraham builds an altar for God, for the Lord. An altar is to put sacrifices on, an altar to worship God on. He's built it there. Verse 8 says, he proceeded from there to the mountain on the east of Bethel and pitched his tent with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. And there he built an altar to the Lord, and he called upon the name of the Lord. So he's not just built an altar, he's calling upon God. Now, where we will see this, or I'll talk about it more with Jacob, but Bethel. Anytime you see a name that has E-L, E-L means God. Daniel, God. I'd have to look it up what it means. Beth means house. Like Bethlehem means house of bread. Lahem is referring to bread. So Bethel is house of God. This is where Jacob, when he's on his way to Haran, where he meets God, at the house of God. And there's another interesting point. We got a few chapters before we get to that. So, Abram has pitched his tent, so to speak, in between Ai and Bethel. Verse 9, or he's called upon the name of the Lord, and he journeyed on to continuing toward the Negev. Now, Negev is south of Israel. Then it says, now there was a famine in the land, so Abraham went to Egypt. So now he's turning west towards Egypt. He's going to sojourn there, for the famine was severe in the land. It came about that when he came near Egypt, that he said to Sarah, his wife, see, now I know that you're a beautiful woman. Now, there's going to be a mistake on Abram's part in here. I'm going to read all this, and then I want you to tell me what the mistake is. So he tells Sarah, his wife, I know that you are a beautiful woman, verse 12, and it will come about when the Egyptians see you that they will say, this is his wife, and they will kill me, but they'll let you live. Please say that you are my sister, so that it may go well with me because of you, that I may live on account of you. It came about when Abram came to Egypt, the Egyptians saw that the woman was very beautiful, 65 years old and very beautiful. Pharaoh's officials saw her and praised her to Pharaoh, and the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. Therefore he treated Abram well for her sake, and gave him sheep and oxen and donkeys and male and female servants and female donkeys and camels. But the Lord struck Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. We don't know what kind of plagues. It just says plagues. Then Pharaoh called Abram and said, "What is this you've done to me? Why did you not tell me that she was your wife? Why did you say she's my sister? Now that I took her for my wife, now then, here's your wife. Take her and go." And Pharaoh commanded his men concerning him, and they escorted him away with his wife, Abraham that is, and all that belonged to him. What's the mistake in there? I'll give you 10 minutes to tell me. What's a mistake? It's a mistake we make all the time.
Well, he told his wife to lie.
Part of it. That's part of it.
But how did Pharaoh find out that
Good question.
she was the wife?
But that's not the
Yeah,
mistake.
That's not the mistake.
No.
He didn't trust God.
Bingo. Abram did not trust God, did
He
he?
took matters into his own hands.
And don't we do that every single day, practically? God, I got this. Don't worry about it. This is just a little thing. God, I got it. Every time I see it, the city Ai, he was between Bethel and Ai, and I've been reading I just finished Joshua. They get into the land, they conquer Jericho. Their next city they go to is the city of Ai. Joshua doesn't say, "Okay, God, you told us how we're going to capture Jericho. What do we do for Ai?" They're confident. They got it now. So they just send in a few thousand men and get whipped. And they had to go to God and find out why. We're like that. We get very confident. I got it, God. It's when we're down, we're low, we're worried, then we're going to God. God, I need help. We need to be going to God every single day over just about everything. I remember back when I was in school, a friend of mine, he says, I just pray to God about everything. I pray to God before I even start the car. I thought he was a little crazy at the moment. The older I get, he's probably a pretty smart guy back then. Abraham made a mistake. You know what's sad? He makes the same mistake again. He didn't learn the first time around. But God, even through his mistake, look what he gets. He's already wealthy. He gets more animals, more slaves. He grows in wealth because of Pharaoh, or whoever it is, king of Egypt at this time. Pharaoh gives him all this stuff for Sarai. Doesn't mean we should just make mistakes and it's always going to work out in our favor. It did this time for Abram. So chapter 13, we'll breeze through as much of this as possible. Egypt and the Negev, he and his wife and all that belonged to him, and Lot with him. Abram was very rich in livestock and silver and in gold. So not just animals, but the good stuff. He went on his journey from the Negev, remember that's south Israel, back up to Bethel, house of God, to the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Ai, to the place of the altar which he had made there formerly, and there Abram called on the name of the Lord again. Now Lot, who went with Abram and had flocks and herds, and the land could not sustain them while dwelling together, for their possessions were so great they were not able to remain together. As far as, I don't know, we know he had camel and he had sheep, he probably had goats. I'm trying to remember how it goes. I remember cattle, I think, when it comes to grass, they just kind of bite and pull. I'm not sure, I think horses are similar, but sheep will basically take grass, roots, and all and leave nothing but dirt if you leave them in a spot too long. Well, you got all of Abraham's sheep and all of Lot's sheep, and then somewhere in here it says the Canaanites were also in the land, They're tearing up the land. And so verse 7 says there was strife or a dispute between the herdsmen of Abraham's livestock and herdsmen of Lot's livestock, and there are Canaanites and Perizzites also dwelling in the land. So Abram, verse 8, said to Lot, let there not be a dispute or strife between you and me, my herdsman and your herdsman. We are brothers, which a better translation is brethren. Not brothers, but they are uncle and nephew, so they're kinfolk. Kinsmen might be how some translations read. Verse 9, is not the whole land before you? Please separate from me. If you go to the left, I'll go to the right. You go to the right, I'll go to the left. So Lot lifted up his eyes. He saw the valley of Jordan, well watered everywhere. This is before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. It was like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, as you go towards Zor, near the Nile River, where it's very plush. So Lot chose for himself the valley of the Jordan, and he journeyed eastward. Thus they were separated from each other. Now, my footnotes say Lot was greedy. He went for the good stuff instead of letting his uncle have it, I guess. But Abraham said, you choose. But there's something in here that really got me as I was reading this. Verse 12, Abraham settled in Canaan. So he's out in the countryside, okay? Lot settled in the, what's it say? Cities of the valley and moved his tents as far as Sodom. Well, that was his first mistake. He's in the cities or living right outside the cities, where Abram is out basically in the countryside. Now the men of Sodom, well, they were very wicked, exceedingly, and sinners against the Lord. Lord said to Abram after Lot had separated from him, now lift up your eyes and look from the place where you are, northward and southward and eastward and westwards, for all the land which you see I will give to you and to your descendants forever. I will make your descendants as dust of the earth, so that if anyone can number the dust of the earth, then your descendants can also be numbered. Like arise, walk about the land through its length and breadth, for I will give it to you. And Abraham moved his tent and came and dwelt by the oaks of Mamre, which is in Hebron, and there he built his second altar to the Lord. And that's where we'll stop for tonight. So, questions? Everybody totally confused? Jerry says he is.
Not to change the subject, but just mention that carbon they found from the pieces of the skull. And they were, when they did the say they run the carbon test on it.
Yeah, it was in the paper.
Well, you saw it, not Karen. It was. Janice, do you remember what it was at?